The temperature inside the detached workshop had dropped to a point where my breath hung in the stagnant air like suspended smoke. I lay curled on a camping cot that smelled of mildew and old motor oil, my spine pressing against the canvas, listening to the relentless drumming of the Seattle rain against the corrugated tin roof. My stomach contracted, a sharp, hollow pain that was becoming my most constant companion. It was ironic, really. For 40 years, my hands had been the steady, revered instruments of healing. I was Dr. Elias Thorne, former chief of thoracic surgery at Mercy General, a man who had commanded operating theaters and saved countless lives. Now, at 72, I was shivering under a moth-eaten wool blanket in my own backyard, exiled like a contagious animal while a parasite feasted on the life I had built. The heavy oak door of the main house opened, spilling a rectangle of warm, golden light onto the wet patio stones. Through the workshop window, obscured by grime and rain, I watched them. Marcus, my son-in-law, stood in the kitchen, silhouetted against the granite countertops I had installed 10 years ago. He was laughing, a glass of my vintage Pinot Noir in his hand. Beside him was Elena, my daughter, my beautiful, brilliant Elena, who now moved with the hunched, apologetic posture of a servant in her own childhood home. She wasn't looking at the workshop. She never looked at the workshop anymore. It was easier for her to pretend that the shed was just a shed, and not the prison where her father was slowly fading away. Hunger forced me to move. My joints popped, a symphony of geriatric decay accelerated by the damp cold. I wrapped the coarse blanket around my shoulders like a shawl and shuffled toward the door. I needed water. The tap in the workshop had frozen 2 days ago, and the thirst was becoming a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. I opened the workshop door and stepped into the downpour, the icy rain soaking through my thin slippers instantly. I navigated the slippery path to the kitchen door, my hand trembling as I reached for the brass handle. It was locked. I knocked, a soft, rhythmic rap of knuckles against glass. Inside, Marcus turned. He didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed, like someone interrupted during a favorite television program. He walked over and unlocked the door, filling the frame with his 6'4" bulk. He wore a cashmere sweater that I recognized. It was mine. "You know the rules, Elias," Marcus said, his voice smooth and devoid of any real warmth. "Kitchen privileges are suspended after 7. It disturbs the evening aesthetic." "I just need water, Marcus. The pipe out back is frozen." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, raspy, weak, pleading. I hated it. Marcus sighed. A theatrical exhalation of patience being tested. He leaned against the doorframe, blocking the warmth from reaching me. "You see, this is exactly why we had to move you out there. The confusion, the forgetfulness. We discussed this. You have a bucket." A bucket. He wanted me to drink from a bucket like a dog. "Elena," I called out, looking past him. "Elena, honey, please, it's freezing." Elena turned her back to us, scrubbing a plate that was already clean. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The shame radiating off her was palpable, but her fear of him was stronger. "Go back to bed, Elias," Marcus said, his smile tightening. "Don't make me call the county and have them expedite the competency hearing. You know what happens then. The state facility. The one with the barred windows and the smell of urine. Is that what you want?" "No," I whispered. "Then go back to your room. Oh, and good news, your pension hit the account today. We're going to upgrade the home theater system. You'll love it. Or, well, you would have." He closed the door. The deadbolt slid home with a final, metallic click that echoed in the hollow of my chest. I stood there in the rain, water streaming down my face, mixing with tears of rage. I was too dehydrated to fully shed. I looked down at my hands. These hands had performed heart transplants. They had held scalps and sutures with godlike precision. Now, they clenched into useless, trembling fists. I retreated to the workshop. The darkness swallowed me whole. I sat on the edge of the cot, shivering violently. My phone, an ancient prepaid flip phone Marcus had tossed me after confiscating my smartphone and laptop, sat on the workbench. It was my only tether to the outside world, but it was a silent one. He had blocked my contacts, drained the credit. But he had made a mistake. He hadn't realized that the bank alerts were set to SMS on this number, a legacy setting from years ago. I picked it up, the screen glowing blue in the dark. A new message. Deposit, $9,200, SSA and private pension. Transfer, $9,200 to account ending in 8,842. Balance, $14.50. He had taken it all. Again. For the fourth month in a row. I lay back down, staring at the rusted rafters. How had it come to this? The slide from respected patriarch to discardable nuisance had been so gradual, so insidious, that I hadn't noticed the trap until the teeth had already snapped shut. It began 6 months ago, shortly after the anniversary of Clara's death. The house felt too big, the silence too loud. Then came the phone call. Elena and Marcus were in trouble. A failed investment, a lawsuit, an eviction. They needed a place to stay for a few weeks, just until they got back on their feet. I had welcomed them. I wanted the noise, the life. I wanted to help. Marcus was charming then. He spoke of synergy and rebounding markets. He offered to handle the maintenance, the bills, the heavy lifting. "You're retired, Elias," he had said over a dinner of grilled salmon. "You should be relaxing, reading your journals, not worrying about property taxes and utility rates. Let me handle the administration. It's the least I can do for your hospitality." The power of attorney had been presented as a convenience, a limited instrument, he had assured me, just to handle the household accounts while I enjoyed my golden years. I trusted him because Elena loved him. I trusted him because I was lonely. I closed my eyes, forcing my mind to work through the hunger. Panic was a luxury I could not afford. In the operating room, when an artery burst or a monitor flatlined, panic was the killer. Calculation was the savior. I needed to think. I was trapped. My assets were frozen or diverted. My communication was cut. My credibility was being systematically dismantled by a man who told the neighbors I was suffering from aggressive early-onset dementia. If I went to the police, Marcus would show them the power of attorney and the medical notes he had forged or manipulated. He would claim I was confused, paranoid, a danger to myself. At my age, with my recent weight loss and unkempt appearance, who would they believe? The charismatic young entrepreneur or the raving old man living in a shed? But I wasn't demented. I was just starving. There was one variable Marcus hadn't accounted for, one person he couldn't charm or intimidate. Lucas. My son. Elena's older brother. A forensic auditor based in Chicago who hunted corporate fraud for a living. We had been estranged for nearly a year, a foolish argument about my refusal to sell the house after Clara died. Marcus had exploited that rift, ensuring Lucas's calls were blocked, his emails filtered. Lucas probably thought I was ignoring him, or worse, that I had chosen Elena over him. But Lucas was stubborn. He was a thorn, and tomorrow was November 14th, Clara's birthday. For 20 years, no matter where we were in the world, the family gathered on November 14th to visit her grave and eat her favorite lemon tart. Marcus didn't know the significance of the date. He hadn't done his research. If Lucas came, I had one chance, just one. The night passed in a blur of shivering half-sleep. I woke to the gray light of a Seattle dawn. The rain had stopped, leaving the world damp and cold. I cleaned myself as best I could with the bottled water I had hoarded, scrubbed my face with a rough cloth, and put on the only suit I had left, a charcoal gray wool blend that now hung loosely on my frame. I needed to look like Elias Thorne, MD, not the scarecrow in the shed. I sat by the dusty window, waiting. Hours dragged. 10 o'clock, 11, noon. Doubt began to creep in, cold and insidious. Maybe he wouldn't come. Maybe he had finally written me off. Then, at 12:45 p.m., a black sedan turned into the long driveway. It wasn't Lucas's usual sports car. It was a rental. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm. The car stopped. The driver's door opened. Lucas stepped out. He looked impeccable, wearing a tailored trench coat, his dark hair cropped close. He carried a bouquet of white lilies, Clara's favorite. He walked toward the front door. his stride purposeful. I didn't wait. I couldn't risk Marcus intercepting him and spinning a lie before I could be seen. I threw open the workshop door and stepped out. "Lucas!" I shouted. My voice cracked, but it carried. Lucas froze. He turned, his eyes scanning the grounds until they landed on me. His expression shifted from confusion to shock, and then to horror. "Dad?" He dropped the flowers. They hit the wet pavement with a soft thud. He crossed the distance between us in seconds, ignoring the mud ruining his Italian shoes. He grabbed me by the shoulders, his grip firm, grounding. "Dad, my God, look at you. You're skeleton thin. Why are you coming out of the workshop? Why are you wearing that dirty suit?" I gripped his forearms, using him to stay upright. "He's here, Lucas. Marcus. He's taken everything." Before Lucas could respond, the front door opened. Marcus stepped out, a smile plastered on his face, though his eyes were hard as flint. Elena hovered behind him, looking pale. "Lucas!" Marcus boomed, extending a hand as he walked down the steps. "What a surprise! We weren't expecting you. The old man is having one of his episodes, I'm afraid." Wandering around the grounds, confused about the time. "We've been trying to get him back inside all morning." Lucas didn't take the hand. He didn't even look at it. He kept his hands on my shoulders, staring at the bruise on my cheekbone, a souvenir from when Marcus had shoved me gently out of the hallway 3 days ago. "An episode?" Lucas repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Yes, sad really," Marcus sighed, dropping his hand. "Dementia. Rapid onset. We're doing our best, but he prefers the shed, thinks it's his old office. We let him play pretend. It keeps him calm." I straightened my spine. I summoned every ounce of authority I had left, the voice I used to command a team of surgeons during a 12-hour aortic reconstruction. "He is lying, Lucas. He forced me out here 3 months ago. He has power of attorney. He's draining the pension, the savings, the investment accounts. I haven't eaten a hot meal in 4 days." Marcus laughed, a dismissive, pitying sound. "See? Paranoid delusions. Classic symptoms. Elena, honey, tell your brother." Elena stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Lucas, please. It's complicated. Dad has been very difficult. Marcus is just trying to manage the assets so we don't lose the house." Lucas looked at his sister. He looked at her with a coldness I had never seen before. "You're letting him sleep in a tool shed, Elena. In November?" "It's heated," Marcus interjected quickly. "It is not," I said. "The heater broke 2 weeks ago." Lucas turned to Marcus. His face was a mask of professional detachment, the same look he wore when dismantling a CEO's fraudulent ledger. "I'm taking him. Now." Marcus bristled, puffing out his chest. "You can't do that. I have medical custody. I decide where he goes. If you try to remove him, I'll call the police and report a kidnapping of a vulnerable adult." Lucas stepped closer to Marcus. He was 3 inches shorter than the other man, but in that moment, he seemed to tower over him. "Call them," Lucas said softly. "Please, call the police." I would love to explain to them why a retired chief of surgery with a net worth of $2 million is malnourished, dehydrated, and living in a shed while you wear his sweater and drink his wine. Marcus hesitated. His eyes darted to the neighbor's house, then back to Lucas. He calculated the risk. He realized a police presence would mean questions he couldn't answer quickly enough. "Fine," Marcus spat. "Take him for lunch, but bring him back by 4. He has medication he needs to take." "There is no medication," I whispered to Lucas. "I know, Dad. Let's go." Lucas guided me to the rental car. He opened the door, helped me in, and buckled my seatbelt. As we pulled away, I watched Marcus standing in the driveway, arms crossed, watching us like a hawk watching a rabbit escape its talons. He looked angry, but not defeated. He thought he still held the leash. We drove in silence for 10 minutes until we reached a high-end hotel downtown. Lucas pulled up to the valet, tossed the keys to the attendant, and led me inside. He booked a suite. Once we were in the room, warm, clean, safe, he ordered room service, soup, bread, roasted chicken, tea. When the food arrived, I wept. I couldn't help it. The smell of warm broth broke the dam, holding back months of humiliation. Lucas sat across from me, watching me eat, his jaw set so tight a muscle feathered in his cheek. He waited until I had finished the soup and half the chicken before he opened his briefcase. He pulled out a legal pad and a pen. "Start from the beginning, Dad. Every detail. Dates, amounts, conversations," I told him. I told him about the temporary stay, the gradual takeover, the isolation, the threats of the state facility. I told him about the power of attorney and the missing money. Lucas wrote furiously. When I finished, he sat back, tapping the pen against his chin. "He's an amateur," Lucas said finally. "A greedy, sloppy amateur. But he has a legal shield. That power of attorney is a weapon. If we attack him directly now, he'll liquidate everything and disappear. Or worse, he'll use his medical proxy to have you committed before we can get a court date." "So, what do we do?" I asked, feeling the fear creep back in. "We build a trap," Lucas said. "I'm a forensic accountant, Dad. I trace money that people hide in offshore shell companies. Marcus is stealing from a checking account. It's child's play, but we need irrefutable proof of intent and duress. We need to prove he's not just managing your money badly, but that he's maliciously defrauding you and endangering your life." Lucas reached into his bag and pulled out a small, flat device. It looked like a credit card holder. "This is a high-fidelity voice recorder. It has a 40-hour battery life and uploads to the cloud whenever it hits a known Wi-Fi network." "He wants me to go back, doesn't he?" I realized, my stomach dropping. Lucas reached across the table and took my hand. "I know, Dad. It's the last thing I want to ask you to do. But if you stay here tonight," he changes the locks, drains the accounts, and flees. "We need 24 to 48 hours. I need you to go back inside that house and get him to say it on tape. I need him to admit that the dementia is a lie and that the money is being stolen." I looked at my son. I saw the pain in his eyes, but also the steely resolve. He was asking me to walk back into the fire, but I was a surgeon. I knew that sometimes, to cure the infection, you had to cut deep. "I'll do it," I said. We formulated the plan. Lucas would drop me off, claiming he had an emergency work call and had to fly back to Chicago immediately. He would play the role of the busy, indifferent son. It would feed Marcus's ego. It would make him feel safe. When we pulled back into the driveway at 4 p.m., the rain had started again. Marcus was waiting on the porch. "Leaving so soon?" Marcus sneered as Lucas helped me out of the car. "Crisis in the Hong Kong office," Lucas said, checking his watch, feigning stress. "I don't have time for this family drama, Marcus. Look, keep him fed, okay?" "I don't want a call from the hospital." "I'll do my best," Marcus said, his grin widening. "Safe flight." Lucas gave me a stiff, formal hug. In my ear, he whispered, "You are the strongest man I know. I'll be watching the cloud upload." Then he drove away. Marcus grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "You told him, didn't you? You whined to your rich son." "I didn't," I stammered, playing the part. He saw the bruise. I said I fell." Marcus stared at me, searching for a lie. Then he shoved me toward the house. "Get inside. No more shed. If you're going to have visitors, I need to keep a closer eye on you. Guest room. And don't think this means you get dinner." He locked me in the guest room. It was better than the shed, but it was still a cell. I checked the recorder taped to the inside of my undershirt. It was running. The next morning, the real work began. I needed to provoke him without getting myself killed. I waited until Elena went to the grocery store. Marcus was in the living room, watching a massive new television that had definitely been purchased with my money. I walked in. "Marcus," I said clearly, "I want to talk about my pension." He didn't look away from the screen. "What about it?" "It's $7,000 a month. Plus the Social Security. That's nearly $10,000. Where is it going? The house is paid off. The taxes are low. Why am I eating soup while you buy this?" I gestured to the TV. He muted the TV and turned slowly. "You really want to do this?" "I want to know why you are stealing from me," I said, keeping my voice steady. He stood up and crossed the room. He loomed over me, invading my personal space, using his height to intimidate. "Let's get something straight, old man. I'm not stealing. I'm reallocating. You had your time. You sat on a mountain of cash while Elena and I struggled. Now it's our turn. It's compensation for putting up with you. So the dementia is a lie? I asked. You're telling the neighbors I'm sick so you can spend my money. He laughed. It was a cruel, jagged sound. Of course it's a lie, but who's going to believe you? You're a relic. I own you. I own this house. I own your bank accounts. And once I declare you incompetent, I'll dump you in a state ward and I won't have to look at your pathetic face ever again. I felt the recorder warm against my chest. I had it. Why, Marcus? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. Why are you doing this? Because I can, he sneered. And because you're too weak to stop me. He turned back to his TV. I retreated to my room, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might trigger an arrhythmia. I sat on the bed and waited. Lucas would have the file now. The clock was ticking. 2 hours later, my phone, which I had hidden under the mattress, buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. Evidence secured. Judge signed the emergency order. Police are en route. Sit tight. I walked to the window. It was raining again. It always seemed to be raining in this nightmare. 10 minutes later, 3 squad cars rolled silently into the driveway, lights flashing but sirens off. Behind them was Lucas's rental car. I heard the front door crash open. Police! Stay where you are. I opened my bedroom door and walked into the hallway. Marcus was standing in the living room, hands raised, face pale as a sheet. Elena had just walked in the back door with groceries. She dropped the bags, eggs shattering on the floor. Lucas walked in behind the officers. He wasn't alone. He was with a woman in a sharp suit, Valerie Kincaid, the fiercest elder law attorney in the state. I knew her by reputation. She was a shark who ate other sharks. Marcus Sterling? An officer asked. Yes? Marcus squeaked. You are under arrest for felony financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, fraud, and assault. Turn around. What? This is ridiculous. Marcus stammered, his eyes darting around. He's my father-in-law. I have power of attorney. Valerie stepped forward, holding a document. Not anymore. Judge Patterson vacated your power of attorney 20 minutes ago, based on audio evidence of admission of fraud. You have also been served with an immediate eviction order and a restraining order. Audio evidence? Marcus looked at me. His eyes widened as realization hit him. The conversation. You set me up, he hissed. You senile old bat. That's enough, the officer said, snapping handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. Elena stood frozen by the spilled groceries. Lucas walked over to her. He didn't yell. He didn't rage. He just looked at her with profound disappointment. You watched him starve, Elena, Lucas said quietly. You watched him sleep in a shed. I didn't know how to stop him, she sobbed. He said it was for the best. You chose a thief over your father, Lucas said. You need to leave, now. But I live here. Not anymore, I said. I stepped forward. I was still thin, still wearing my ill-fitting suit, but I was no longer the victim. I was the surgeon again, cutting out the rot. This is my house, Elena. I built it with your mother. We raised you here, and you allowed a stranger to turn it into a prison. You are not welcome here tonight. But Dad, go, I said. My voice did not waver. The police dragged Marcus out. He was shouting threats, claiming he would sue, claiming he would ruin us. It was the desperate noise of a drowning man. Elena followed, weeping, clutching her purse, escorted by another officer. When the door closed, the silence that descended was heavy, but it was clean. Lucas turned to me. He looked exhausted. Are you okay, Dad? I looked around the room. The furniture was different. The art was gone, sold off by Marcus. But the bones of the house were still there. I will be, I said. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. Lucas stayed for a month, taking a leave of absence. We hired forensic cleaners to scrub the house from top to bottom, erasing every trace of Marcus's scent. We changed the locks, installed a security system that rivaled Fort Knox, and Lucas audited every single transaction from the last 6 months. We recovered about 60% of the money. The rest Marcus had gambled away on high-risk stocks. But the house was safe. The pension was secure. Criminal charges were pressed. With the audio recording and the paper trail Lucas uncovered, Marcus pleaded guilty to avoid a maximum sentence. He got 5 years in state prison. Elena received probation for her complicity, contingent on counseling and restitution. I didn't see Elena for a long time. She sent letters, begging for forgiveness. I read them, filed them, but didn't answer. Forgiveness is a process, not a switch. One evening in late December, I sat by the fireplace in the living room. The Christmas tree was up, decorated with the ornaments Clara and I had collected over 40 years. Lucas was in the kitchen, making hot chocolate. I looked at my hands. They were steadier now. The weight was coming back. I had started consulting at the hospital again, just teaching, passing on knowledge. I realized then that the cold of the workshop had never really left me. It was a part of me now, a chilling reminder of how fragile dignity really is. We spend our lives building fortresses, careers, savings, reputations, thinking they will protect us. But the walls are only as strong as the people we let inside the gates. Lucas walked in and handed me a mug. "Thinking about them?" he asked. "I'm thinking about trust," I said. As a surgeon, I held hearts in my hands. I had to trust myself not to tremble. I forgot that I needed to trust others to hold me when I couldn't hold myself. "You have me," Lucas said. "You always did." "I know." I took a sip of the hot chocolate. It was sweet, warm, and rich. I watched the fire dance in the hearth. I was 72 years old. I had lost money, lost weight, and lost the illusion of a perfect family. But as I looked at my son and felt the warmth of my own home surrounding me, I knew I had retained the only thing that truly mattered. I had survived the winter, and I was ready for the spring.